My name is Kara Sherpa. I was an SOS participant for 8 years, and this summer I'm happy to be interning with SOS as their alumni relations intern. We're excited to be here with Kristin Williams. Can you please tell us about yourself and how you connected with SOS?
Sure. So hi, everybody. I am Kristin Kenney-Williams, and I am currently serving very humbly as the board chair for SOS. I was on the board for several years, quite a few years ago, took some time off and came back on about 2 years ago, and could not be more thrilled to have been a part of SOS in the early days, and then now really helping this incredible nonprofit organization as it heads into its next 25 years. I have my own consultancy business. I consult with regard to public affairs and communications, and I live in the Vail Valley in Colorado, Eagle Vale specifically. My husband and I have 3 kids that were born and raised in Vail, and one is off at college already, one will be a senior in high school, and then we have an 8th grader. And we love the outdoors. Everybody's getting back to school in this crazy new world, but it's all good. We're all very hopeful and optimistic.
Thank you. How did you navigate high school and the uncertainty of what to do after, especially when you were starting out?
Sure. So my family actually moved us to Vail from Connecticut when I was a sophomore in high school. And it was a huge move, as you can imagine, going from East Coast to Colorado. We were born in, my sister, brother, and I were actually born in California. So we'd moved from California to Connecticut and then to Vail in high school. So I'm a very proud Battle Mountain grad. I won't tell you what year, because that'll really date me. But so I will say it was an extraordinarily hard move, but within 6 months, I just fell in love with Colorado. I fell in love with the people here, how kind they are, how much of a community the Vail Valley is, and Battle Mountain High School was, and I think still is today. Fell in love with how passionate everyone was about the outdoors. I was always into sports and whatnot, but I don't think I ever truly embraced the outdoors until I moved here. So that was terrific. I always knew that I wanted to major in journalism. And so, during my junior, senior years, I was really focused on finding schools that had strong journalism programs, and ultimately went to the University of Southern California. I will say, I was always very committed to, wanting to pursue journalism and political science as well. And I was so focused on that I will say a lesson learned for me once I got to USC was, I don't think I spent enough time really thinking about the fit and really exploring, who is the student population at a particular school? Does that match with me, who I am, where I'm from, what my values are? I had a great 2 years at USC. Academically, I did really well, but that fit just wasn't there. And so, interestingly, not so much for my parents, but I ended up transferring to another school for my junior year. That wasn't the right fit. And then I took some time off. And that time off, I think, was really beneficial. I think we don't give enough credit to the fact that, when you're making these huge decisions about what to do after high school, you're only 17 or 18 years old. And there's still so much to learn. And I think it's okay to take that time if you need extra time. So that would be my biggest advice, is just always in your decision making, whether it's a job or a school, a nonprofit that you want to be affiliated with, make sure it's right for you as a person and your values and you align. Ultimately, I did, after my time off, I transferred to my 3rd college, and that was the right fit. And I ended up at George Washington in Washington, D.C. I amazingly was able to graduate with maybe only an extra year So I kept fairly on track, but never give up, I guess, and just always make sure you take the time to find that right fit.
Thank you for your response. I also went ahead and transferred from a community college in Colorado, which is Colorado Mountain College, which most of our participants do go to just for the first 2 years. And then I went ahead and transferred to DU. And we do have a lot of experiences with transferring, especially with our participants. And then the second question is, what tools in life do you use every day to ensure success?
Again, I think it's very important that you enter each day and each effort, each task, each problem you need to solve, just a reminder of what your core values are, right? It's a job effort or a school effort. You're clearly there because you're smart enough, you have expertise in that subject matter. So you don't need to worry about that. You just need to make sure that whatever you're doing, saying to achieve success, that does align with your values and your gut. And if something's off there, you need to call it out and pivot and adjust. So I think, that tool of just constantly reminding yourself of what your core values are. And the beauty with SOS is that you've been working on tremendous values for, several years, right? You might have some that you add to that core list, but I think that's a really important one. I think it's super important, and you'll learn this. You've already started learning it, but you're going to learn it as you work through life. But it's super important to build teams and align yourself with not only colleagues at work, but colleagues, friends, significant others outside of your workplace, and check in with them, bounce things off of them, have them review your work. Internally, externally, it's just super important to have a group of people that you can rely on, that you can trust, that you can be vulnerable with. And it just makes you a better person, and it makes your work, your efforts all the more better. The best thing we can do is be so self-aware and so vulnerable that we're able to take input, and we're able to take feedback, and we're able to take constructive criticism, and then parlay that back into the outcomes of our efforts. And you will be all the more successful for that.
I just had a follow-up question that I just came up with. I was wondering, your time away from college, when you had that gap year, would you recommend that gap year between the end of high school and maybe before going to college?
I think, and it's interesting because now with my own children, we've had those conversations. I really think it's just super important to listen to yourself. And so after high school, if you're, for whatever reason, just not sure what you want to do, where you want to be, if it's important that you need to work for a year and save money, I think that's all okay. I do worry a little bit about, and I was totally this way. It's so exciting to enter the workforce and start making money. I do worry a little bit if you get that going and everything's going great on that front, and then you just keep putting off college. I think college is so important. It's incredible for relationship building, for your own maturity. You're out on your own. So I think if you do feel the need to take a gap year, you got to do it. And there's also nothing wrong with just wanting to be a part of your community workforce, and maybe college isn't for you. So many people are just not academically inclined, and it's such a struggle. And if that's the case, that's okay too. There are so many other options, but I think that idea of continuing to learn is super important. So even if you do decide to take a gap year, or you do decide if you've taken some time off, that college isn't really for you, find ways to stay engaged and keep learning. So I think with all things related to education, it's really about the individual. And so if it's important to you to take a year in between high school and college, do it. If you need to take some time off during college, do it. If you need to slow down a little bit, now's a good time. With COVID, we're seeing so many students, either lessening their class schedule because they're not inclined to learn online, or taking some time off now. Certainly post-college, you are expected to really get into the workforce. And so there's no time like the present, I suppose, to take some time and travel, work, pursue other passions. Because once you're out of college, it's full steam ahead. So it's really, that's a very individual decision. And, if you think you'll be all the better for it and more successful for it, I'm very supportive of the idea.
I'm feeling the pressure now since I just finished college.
Well, you're doing great. So
thank you. And the third question that we have is, how did you navigate your career after college as you entered the workforce?
Yeah, so I did end up, with a journalism degree and was really pursuing jobs within that field. I did my first job out of college. I was a researcher for a writer in the world of politics, and it was fascinating. I think I was like the only 22-year-old working for a 70-year-old man and absolutely loving it. So a little nerdy. I kept, pursuing jobs in that field, really loving it. And it's a hard field to enter, very competitive. It certainly was at the time. Journalism looks a lot different today than it did back then. The confidence that was needed to pursue, good jobs in that field, that was a really, really positive growth for me. To keep that confidence up and to keep pursuing jobs in a very competitive field. And also, it doesn't pay well. Historically and today, it's not a field that pays well. And so, I'd have to find some other jobs to supplement my income. But ultimately, though, and interestingly, my husband is also a journalist. And when we got married, after a few years of working together in that field, not necessarily together, but from an income standpoint, we needed to make some changes. And so I ended up, really thinking long and hard about what my traits, expertise, strengths were. And I pivoted a bit and went into the public relations, public affairs, just a different world of communication. And it was scary and super exciting too. And ever since then, I made that change, I think in 1997. And I've kept evolving what that looks like. And it's worked out tremendously. And I've had just some incredible projects that I've worked on and incredible companies that I've worked for. So making that pivot, like I said, was hard and scary, but it also opened up, a whole new world of people and ideas and projects. And it's been terrific. And my husband stayed a successful writer. So it's all good.
Thank you for sharing that. And the very last question that I have for you today is, as a founder and president of a strategic planning firm, what personal approaches have you applied as you lead the conversation about tackling diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Such a great question, and it's such an important question today. I think embracing diversity and empowering efforts in the right direction, I think subconsciously that's always been a core value. Especially over the last few years, I've spent a lot of time working on affordable housing efforts and initiatives, both for people I work for and on a volunteer basis. And it's an important component of community that I believe in. And the more I work on it, the more I see the nexus back to empowering all members of our communities. I think, too, I align myself with nonprofit service, Habitat for Humanity, and SOS Outreach, that are organizations that are lifting up all of our kids, our youth, our families, and making, one community. So what's interesting is that I think, I just naturally gravitated toward those types of efforts and those types of organizations. Over the last few months, we've all had to consciously really think about how we can be a part of empowering everybody in our communities and in our society. And I am so proud of efforts like, for example, setting up this alumni program through SOS. We're all thinking so much more strongly about what we can do. So I just really encourage people to think about aligning themselves with efforts and with organizations that are embracing diversity and making a difference. We have to. It's crazy that we're in this 2020 time and we're still seeing so many issues. It's wrong. To that point, I think it's incredibly important moving forward that we speak up and we don't look the other way. We don't walk the other way. We've got to stand up for each other. And I think, the dialogue of late is super important. And I've never been more hopeful that we're actually going to see change finally. And, it's certainly important to keep the conversations going with my children, keep the right alignment with efforts and organizations that are making great change.
Kristin, thank you so much for being with us today.